Hello, Misfits, and welcome. In today's video, we're talking all about other tabletop role-playing games that you guys really need to try out. Of course, we're specifically talking about things other than the infamous Dungeons and Dragons. Now, I've gotten a number of comments over the years about why I should try out some other games, why Dungeons and Dragons is inferior to this other system and all of that. And, you know, I'm glad people are super passionate about their other tabletop role-playing games. And of course, I try to play other systems when I can, but I do want to make a small disclaimer here that this video is not to say that you should leave behind the system you've been playing in for years and abandon it for something new. This is simply a video telling you that you should at least go out there and try some different things. Explore other systems, see what they have to offer, because you may find that they do something differently that you really, really like. And then the best thing about all of these games is you can kind of take that mechanic or take that thing that you like and incorporate it into your own game as sort of like a house rule or sort of a homebrew version of the system you've been playing in. That is a really important takeaway from playing in other systems that I think sometimes we forget about. So let's get into these other systems. These are in no particular order. I am not going to rank these in any way and say which one is the best and which one is the worst. They're all very different and they all have different things to offer, and I think that that's important. And of course, these are just my thoughts and opinions, my observations, and they might be different from yours, and that is totally okay. Take from this what you will and ignore the rest. So first up is Star Trek Adventures, which is vastly different from Dungeons and Dragons. In Star Trek Adventures, you are a part of Starfleet, a Starfleet crew, and you are going on missions to explore strange new worlds, seek out new life and new civilizations, and to boldly go where no one has gone before. And this is a great TTRPG. It's on its second edition, and I guess I should say up front, I've technically only played in first edition, but I gotta say, guys, that this system, it's really tight. It's really well thought out, and I really, really loved it. I have glanced at the second edition and looked through some of the differences, and from what I can tell, it doesn't really introduce any major changes to how the game functions. If anything, it just streamlines things and improves the bits that maybe didn't run as smoothly the first time around. But this is just a blast to play in. I think it's very, very beginner friendly. I think it's really easy to jump into this system, even if you've never played anything like this before. And what's nice about this is that it can be very episodic, not unlike the show. Star Trek, the show, it generally ends up being pretty episodic. There's a new problem to solve each episode, a new thing to investigate or explore, and this game is kind of set up the same way. Of course, you can have big overarching plots if you want, but you don't have to. It can be very like one-shot friendly to just sort of string together a bunch of isolated adventures with the same crew playing through them. These adventures, yeah, they're presented like a Star Trek episode. So there's a problem, an anomaly, or something to explore, and your character has to uncover what that is as they sort of investigate the scenario. And I really like it. This really taps into creative problem solving and really highlighting that is like the main aspect of the game. You play as different crew members, so your table, you're all different members of the crew, and you all have your different specialties. This is kind of like how different classes function in Dungeons and Dragons, and there's really a lot of variety here. It's easy to make unique characters that will stand out against the others, and I really like that. Another great thing about Star Trek Adventures is there's a lot of creative freedom here. If you know anything about Star Trek at all, then you know that those episodes could be about literally anything. You could be exploring a very primitive planet or place. You could be confronting your evil doppelganger from an alternate reality. You could be navigating intricate space politics, or you could be traveling through time. Literally anything can happen because it's space. I mean, you're looking at the vast, expanses of the universe where, anything that is possible is probably out there somewhere. And that's what's great about Star Trek. Your little adventure or your mini campaign or your massive sprawling campaign could be about anything. And that's super exciting from a game master perspective, just having that much creative freedom. The system itself is a 2d20 system, but there are instances in which you might add other d20s to the rolls that you are making. This is really a game about measuring the number of successes that you roll, and rolling multiple d20s really depends on the task, your skills, and other factors that may be at play. I find the multiple d20s really easy. Everybody at my table picked up on that really quickly. We had no issues with that. And just like measuring the number of successes, like, oh, I got 3 successes because I got to add my special skill on top of the 2d20s, and you only got 1 success, so I beat you. It just makes a lot of sense. It's easy to understand. This is also a game where you are gaining momentum throughout the scenes that you play through and the experiences that you are having, and then in times when things are really dire or critical, you can spend that momentum that you have gained through your role play and the roles that you have made to help better your outcome in the long run. And I really like that. My table has really found that these like spendable resources that are tied to your character or your party of characters is really, really fun. It gives you a lot of agency over what happens and what the outcome is. And that's great. So weaknesses. Are there weaknesses to this system? I mean, honestly, I think it's really, really tight. I think it's well thought out. I think everything here makes a lot of sense, and, the gameplay is really, really fun. I think if I had to say if there are any weaknesses, it would be that the Quickstart by itself doesn't really help you understand character creation that great, but they give you a bunch of pre-generated characters to play as for the Quickstart adventure. And so that sort of covers that. I believe once you actually get the rulebook itself, then, create as many characters as you want. But the Quickstart by itself doesn't necessarily lend itself to that super well, just in my experience. But that's a very nitpicky thing. And I guess if there's any other weakness, it would be that this system is not as popular as some other TTRPG systems, so you might not find as many, supports or resources for it on places like Roll20 and things like that. But as it gets more popular, that's going to change, and I'm really impressed with the look of 2nd edition and the 2nd edition Quickstart. It all looks so polished and well laid out, so definitely worth your time to check out. Okay, I really don't think I can make a list about other tabletop role-playing games without mentioning what is arguably Dungeons & Dragons' biggest competitor, which is Pathfinder by Paizo. So Pathfinder is, it is the big high fantasy role-playing game in every possible way that Dungeons & Dragons is. They are very, very similar in a lot of ways, and the theme and style is very similar throughout both. I personally ran the beginner box for my table a couple of years back during all of the OGL stuff, and really, I can't recommend the beginner box enough. It's a fantastic way to get into the game. It does a really good job of explaining everything and introducing you to all of the components of this system, but bit by bit, so you're not overwhelmed. And I feel like I should mention Pathfinder comes from Dungeons & Dragons, so it stems from Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 when D&D created 4th edition. A bunch of people didn't like that, and so Pathfinder was created as the answer. So that's part of why they're so similar, is because they, have the same parents, essentially. Pathfinder is like the sibling that branched off and moved out of the house, So we still have a D20 system here, and a lot of these mechanics and things work the exact same way. A lot of the spells function similarly as well. But let's get into some of the things that I really like about this system. The 3-action economy. This is probably one of the things the system is more famous for. And yeah, basically when you go into combat, everybody gets 3 actions, period. And, what you do with those actions is up to you. You could cast 2 spells on your turn, or you could use all 3 actions to run away or hit. And that is really, really cool. It feels succinct. It feels like it makes a lot of sense. It's easy to understand. And this is a contrast to D&D, where, how many actions you get really depends on what class you play as, and how you utilize the different actions on your turn really depends on what class you play as. And sometimes that can be difficult to understand, whereas Pathfinder, just saying you get 3 actions, you immediately understand that from the get-go. Pathfinder often feels deadlier than D&D, and I find this a really refreshing change, because in D&D, often the players end up feeling kind of invincible, especially later in the game. And so it's nice to know that the stakes are high, and that definitely death is on the table for you in Pathfinder, at least in what I have watched and played through, which is fun. It's a nice change. I also think that Pathfinder does a really good job of just defining all of the rules. It feels like they have thought about just about every scenario imaginable, and they have an answer for you, and that is really, really nice. There are so many systems, D&D included, where I'm presented with a problem or a situation, and I don't know exactly what the answer is, and what the correct ruling is a bit amorphous. And I feel like in Pathfinder, in my experience, what I have listened to and watched in other tables, generally there is a ruling for how something is meant to be done for most things. And I really like that. They also have really well thought out mechanics for multi-classing and further customizing your character and class, and I think that is something that D&D tends to lack. When you get into multi-classing for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, it's not as good as it could be. And Pathfinder has like very specific mechanics for like learning a new skill throughout the course of the campaign and sort of multi-classing in that way, and it's fascinating, and I really do like it. Pathfinder also has just really rich world lore, and that is something that I really do appreciate. It's not that Dungeons & Dragons doesn't, but through the history of Dungeons & Dragons, their focus on what world like a game is set in and stuff has changed over time, In earlier editions, we've got Greyhawk and stuff, and now we move into Faerun, and really all we ever focus on these days seems to be the Sword Coast as opposed to the rest of the world. And so it's just, they've had to juggle a lot because they've been around for a really long time. Whereas Paizo, they've been able to focus their attention on their world of Galarian and the universe that it's in. And so they've really been able to just put a lot of care and attention to that, and it really shows, and it's really, really nice. Another thing that Pathfinder itself is really famous for is these big sprawling campaigns. These are truly epic adventures that you can play through. They are multi-book campaigns that take your character from level 1 all the way to level 20, and they are just a different experience. If you've ever listened to a table play through or watched a table play through the entirety of one of these grand campaigns, it really is remarkable that they're able to write material like that for you to play through. It's something that I just am not sure that Dungeons and Dragons itself in the 5th edition version of the game has really quite been able to capture. those campaigns tend to be shorter, smaller. The books are thinner than these big epic tales in Pathfinder. So just something else to note there. Weaknesses. Let's talk about that. I do really enjoy Pathfinder. I think there's a lot of things that it does right that D&D 5th edition D&D hasn't quite perfected or is still trying to figure out. And you know, if you play 5e, you can probably make the switch to Pathfinder and not be too lost. But I do think while Pathfinder does have a rule or an answer for everything, sometimes it's too many rules. Sometimes it feels like there's too much that they've thought about, and some of your leeway in terms of how you rule things or handle things gets a little restricted there. But that's just a personal thought there. I think it could easily overwhelm players that aren't familiar with TTRPGs, so I don't think this is as beginner friendly. But that beginner box does really go out of its way to try and mitigate that as much as possible. It really is possibly like the best starter set that I've ever like looked at and played through. But yeah, that's a little bit about Pathfinder. Okay, next up, let's switch it up. Let's do something very different. Next up, we have Delta Green. This is Delta Green by Arc Dream Publishing. And I recently ran a game in this system, and we had an absolute blast. The Glass Cannon Network also has a Delta Green show called Get in the Trunk, and that really helped me better understand the system and see how it can be played out. I highly recommend checking them out. Very, very good. But this is like a modern day setting, sort of X-Files-esque kind of game. You are secret agents. You are like kind of working for the government, and you are going out of your way to try and shield the people from learning about and being exposed to these like unnatural threats. There's a lot of Lovecraftian themes in here. The system itself is heavily inspired by the TTRPG system Call of Cthulhu, and it is so much fun to play. So yeah, it's a modern day setting, which is a very refreshing change from these fantasy games that a lot of us normally play. It can be a bit daunting for the game master or the handler in this system to have to contend with the existence of the internet and cell phones, but trust me, it's fine. It's a lot of fun, if anything. In this system, you are rolling percentile die to determine whether you succeed or fail at something, and you're actually trying to roll low, which is a fun change. So it sort of flips the script on what a lot of us D&D players are used to. This game is all about gray morality, in my opinion. This is very much at the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few kind of situation, and watching players grapple with that and decide like, all right, do we save these couple of innocent people and doom the world? Or do we doom these couple of people and save the world? Like, watching them grapple with that kind of decision is always super fun and fascinating. This is a game where it's investigative in nature, but finding the truth is not necessarily the goal. It's a very roleplay heavy kind of game, which is a lot of fun if that's something that your table enjoys. You get to decide how you play out, you know, handling these like sanity costing experiences, and how your relationships with your family and friends deteriorate as you were exposed to these unnatural threats. And that is so fascinating to watch. And of course, this is a game about losing sanity. Sanity is something that you are keeping track of, and as you play through different missions as these various agents, you are exposed to things that just really cause your mind to just unravel. Let's talk about potential weaknesses. I think really the big weakness for this system, in my opinion, is the combat. This game is more about roleplay and investigating. It's not really as much about combat, in my opinion. I feel like if you are in combat in this game, then something has probably gone wrong. I think the goal generally is to avoid combat. But the way combat is set up in general, it's just really restrictive. You only get one action, and that includes movement and reacting to things. And I just really don't like this. I think the point is to make combat feel really, really quick, but sometimes you end up having to spend multiple rounds to accomplish like one thing. And I don't like that too much. Everything kind of felt a little bit more, I don't know, clunky once we got to the combat portion of the game we ran. So I love the system. I love the game and the setting. I definitely want to run more. But when we run more, I'm probably going to tweak how I handle combat just for my own personal preference and the preferences of the people at my table. I also think that Delta Green it's a lesser known system. I think it's gaining more traction these days. It's super affordable, just a few bucks for, an adventure, and that's great, but you won't necessarily find all of those adventures available on places like Roll20. So just be aware of that. It's really more of a theater of the mind game, so like it doesn't really matter if you have like if you have maps or things like that, but just know that it's lesser known. It's cheap, but not as many people know about it. Next up, we are going to talk about a very, very different TTRPG system, and that is Avatar Legends. Avatar, like Avatar The Last Airbender, Avatar The Legend of Korra. I personally actually haven't run this game, but I have played in it. That's actually the same for Star Trek as well. I've been a player in that game, but I've not run it myself. But I own the rulebook, I've read through it, I supported it when it was on Kickstarter, and we definitely had a blast playing through this game. This show, this IP, this world is something that I hold really near and dear to my heart. I love Avatar. I loved growing up watching the show, and so getting to play a game where you dive into that world is so much fun. And that's definitely a highlight of this game. It's got really rich lore. When you are playing this game and you're trying to set up your own adventures and campaigns, you can decide what era to play in. And each era, of course, has its own avatar for it. So you can choose whether you're going to play in Avatar Kyoshi's era, or Avatar Korra's era, or Avatar Aang or Roku's era, which is super fun. And the era that you play in really determines the level of technology available to you, and also what kinds of themes might be at play in the world, which is really fun. I really like they put thought into that. This game is heavily inspired by the show. Character creation is just as much about building your character as it is about defining like your team of characters. If you remember the show, it's the team, the like team avatar is such a big part of it, and how they gel together and how their goals align with each other, or sometimes conflict with each other, and that is definitely a big part of this game as well. This game is also very focused on playing out scenes and dividing the story into acts. And it feels like you're kind of building out the show or the season of the show, which is very interesting. It's a very role-play centric kind of game with this sort of writing/storytelling method of structuring and presenting the game, which is it's interesting because I feel like that is kind of how I approach D&D and a lot of other systems as well. Like I always go about setting up my adventures and sessions and campaigns in that way, but it's interesting to see it like really explicitly outlined that way in a rule book. They've just like gone out and said it like, no, we're structuring this like a show, like a movie, and I find that fascinating. Of course, you can play as a bender or a non-bender, and if you choose non-bender, you can focus on weapons or technology as your focus. This is also a game of balance, so not unlike the show, the balance between your conflicting principles is very important, and some actions will throw you off balance, and you may have to work to try and get back on track, which is really fun. This is a D6 system, so you're not juggling a bunch of die, you're just working with your D6s here. But I do think that there are some weaknesses to this system, but I probably should preface that when I played this game, it was pretty new. Like, we had very recently received the rulebook after the Kickstarter finished. So I imagine it's probably been adjusted a bit over time. But let's talk about the weaknesses. So I really do think a weakness of this system is combat. Like, the goal of this game clearly was roleplay and storytelling, and combat, the way they approach it, is more like storytelling than actual like combat mechanics. I don't think it's defined enough, in my opinion. I think it would greatly benefit from rules for determining like turn order, and there just really aren't any. It's just sort of like the game master just sort of decides who goes first, and then you kind of go back and forth until you finish, I guess, a round of combat. And it's just not laid out as well as I would like. So that's just my own personal opinions there. The lore and the care is there. And while more amorphous rules can provide a lot of freedom, I think also it can leave you feeling confused or unsupported while running the game if you're used to having like mechanics and rules to back you up. And like, you know, if you're very new to TTRPGs, you don't know what to do. You don't know how these games typically function, and so you can feel really lost trying to figure out how to run this game. Whereas like if you've been playing different systems for a while, then it's like, okay, like I know what they're going for. I kind of know how a session should go. It's gonna be fine. So just a bit of a nitpick there. And, you know, I should say as a positive though, they have a starter set now. And they did not have that when we first played the game. So it's nice that they have that. I'm sure that that does a better job of introducing new players to the game. I do wish that they had a free quick start. I think that would be really beneficial. The starter set does cost money. It's not expensive, but, you know, having just a free quick start to quickly get you into the game and help you understand enough mechanics to run would be really nice here. Last but not least, we are talking about Call of Cthulhu. This is the most recent non-D&D game that I ran, and I just really, really fell in love with it. I just love this system, and it's just, it's so much fun. This continues sort of the theme of all of these systems, really, that I've discussed today. It's a very role-play-centric kind of game. All of these feel more like playing out a story, investigating something, where combat really isn't the focus. It's just possibly an aspect of the game, depending on how things go. And I think that says a lot about me. I famously don't enjoy combat, and of course, I made a list of games that don't feature combat super heavily. But yeah, Call of Cthulhu, this is a Lovecraftian kind of game. You are investigators that are uncovering mysteries and dealing with the unnatural, the unexplained. This is like the grandfather of Delta Green that I talked about earlier. And yeah, it's super investigative, super fun. In Delta Green, your goal was never to understand the horrors that you were investigating and to shield everybody from them. Call of Cthulhu, this takes place during like the 1920s. It takes place in a time before we were wizened up to that understanding, in my opinion. So you very well might be trying to better understand these horrible things that you're investigating, but it just might lead to your demise. Just like Delta Green, this is a game of sanity and tracking your sanity as you are exposed to these threats. This is also another percentile die system where you are trying to roll low. The uncovering mysteries portion of this game feels a bit like Agatha Christie at times, feels a little bit like Scooby-Doo at times, and also feels a bit like The Twilight Zone. And this aspect of the game, it's really heavily supported by the really, really high quality handouts that are featured in the official adventures that Chaosium has published. Really, it's just good stuff here. They really pay attention to trying to be authentic to the time period, and the level of detail in some of these handouts, the like handwritten notes or things written out on a typewriter and stuff. It's really, really special here. It's something that you just don't often see, and I really enjoyed that. So something else you should know about this game is that it is deadly. It's famously can be quite deadly. Delta Green also can be quite deadly as well, because in these games you are just a guy. You're just a human being. You are not some 100-year-old elven wizard that can torch, the entire coastline. You are just some dude that saw too much, and I find that super refreshing. Depending on how you play the game and run the game, your players could just have a revolving door of characters, which can be really interesting. This also has a really fun vintage feel, where you might be playing in the 20s or the 30s, and it makes for a fun change where you can rely on the things you know about our world and our history, but you're removed enough from modern day that you don't feel, threatened or concerned about the existence of, like, the internet or cell phones. There's still a lot of, like, wonder and mystery and pseudo kind of fantasy that you can get away with in being removed from modern day, which is nice. There's also a lot of like real history that you can use to help flesh out the stories that you are telling, which is super fun. Weaknesses of this game. Honestly, I really don't think there are many. Call of Cthulhu is on its 7th edition, and it really shows. With each edition, it feels more and more polished. If there is a weakness, maybe it's that the base game itself might be too deadly, but they've already introduced a way to kind of fix this. They've introduced pulp rules, which, help you create sort of a more heroic, sturdy character that can survive more adventures and last a little bit longer. This helps you feel a little bit more like the heroic characters you might be used to in like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of game. And you can apply these pulp rules to literally any adventure, regardless of whether it was written for pulp or not. So, that's really great. So they've sort of already covered that. If there's another weakness, maybe it's just like tonally, Call of Cthulhu is going to be a darker game. There are truly some horrific scenarios that get described, and you may want to find some creative ways to lighten the mood at times, because that can be super depressing if you're not striking some sort of comedic balance in other role-playing ways, because some of these scenarios can be quite depressing. Same for Delta Green. They really are quite similar. So just be aware of that. Yeah, these are my 5 systems. Now, notably, I did not mention, some others that are probably quite famous. I did not talk about Daggerheart. And, I'm sure some of y'all were expecting that, but really the reason why is because I haven't had a chance to play it yet. It takes a lot of time to, play in these different systems and prepare them, because more often than not, I'm the one that's running it. So I have to sit down and read all of the rules and get to a level of understanding that makes me feel comfortable not only running a game, but teaching the system to the people at my table. And, as a teacher in real life, I don't take that lightly. I want to make sure that I can present the information and present these rules in a way that all of my players will understand. It's not enough for me that like half of them get it off of my explanation alone and we play through the game. I want them all to understand so that they can truly enjoy the game, but also they can more accurately express what they liked or disliked about it by the end of the session. You know what I mean? But these are super fun. We've had a blast playing through some of these, and I know we don't have recordings for all of these, But the experiences of playing through these different systems is so important because we learn about these mechanics that we really like. I've learned that my table, and myself included, really enjoy the spendable resources in some of these systems that you can use to change the outcome. Star Trek has that with momentum. We played a zombie game, Zombie Road RPG, that has one with the endurance in that system. Call of Cthulhu has those with luck. You can spend luck to change the outcomes of rolls, and those aspects are really, really nice, and it makes me wonder if I can incorporate that in D&D in some way. And so I like experiencing these very different mechanics and seeing, how somebody else approaches a tabletop role-playing game and how they handle this, type of play in a way different from Dungeons and Dragons. It's so easy to get used to that and forget that there are other systems out there. And there's so much to learn from playing in these other systems. It really is a great experience, but it does take time. It does take quite a lot of time. I think especially so when you play virtually and you can't be there in the room to help your players with certain things. So, we'll get there. We'll keep playing through different systems. I definitely feel inspired to explore even more. But I also want to make sure that I don't do that at the cost of progressing our own, campaign that we have started recently. So it's a bit of a juggling act. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about these different systems. I hope you feel inspired to check them out yourself. Of course, if you, want to support me and the channel, feel free to like and subscribe. That stuff really helps me out. But more importantly, leave a comment down below. Which of these systems have you tried? Which of these systems do you like or dislike? What are some other systems not on this list that I should try? I would love to hear about all of that from you guys. The engagement on these videos is what helps people find the channel, and that's super important. But with all of that said and done, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and I'll see you again next time. I really, really enjoyed Call of Cthulhu. I really like Delta Green as well, but I know that there are parts of Delta Green system that I feel like I need to tweak, and I feel like Call of Cthulhu got more of those right. And I definitely want to dive into that system some more. Now, I definitely already have plans to do so, but in true Amanda fashion, that's yeah, I'm gonna lay the groundwork so that in several years we can, play a Call of Cthulhu campaign. But, we have to finish the current campaign first. But I definitely want to play more in that system. I really, really liked it. And I know we haven't gotten into Daggerheart yet. One of my players wants to read up on that system and run some stuff so that I can be a player. So we'll try all of that out and hopefully share it with you guys. But yeah, have a good day.